Welcome to our cosmic voyage. Celebrate this remarkable gift from the Apollo program, which showcases what human ingenuity and determination can all achieve by way of putting the first footsteps on the lunar floor. Let's first place ourselves in a setting of the 1950s and 60s, a severe stage of geopolitical tension known as the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a deadly struggle for the global seat, hell-bent to prove the superiority of their respective ideologies and technological powers. This rivalry extended further than Earth's atmosphere on the 4th of October 1957, when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite in the world. That little beeping sphere orbited our planet, sent shockwaves through the American society and the circles of government. Indeed, it is referred to as the Sputnik shock, which truly initiated the space race. The United States was shocked at the Soviet feat and quickly started to gear up its act. Responding to this new requirement of a unified space program, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, was created on July 29, 1958. This new department had to race against and overcome the Soviet space abilities. As tensions in the space race mounted, so did an incredibly charismatic president on the world platform. On May 25, 1961, President John F. Kennedy addressed a joint session of Congress with one speech. He set history moving in a new direction. In his bold proclamation, Kennedy declared,
"I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth."
His bold challenge whipped up the frenzy of the American people and spurred on one of the most innovative scientific and engineering enterprises ever undertaken by humanity. In reality, then, Kennedy's vision was not a dream, but an appeal. The challenge of reaching the moon was immense, to be realized through the most amazing technological foresight most everyone could muster with the collaboration of thousands of people. It involved quite a few hurdles for the engineers and scientists at NASA. They had to develop powerful rockets capable of escaping from the Earth's gravity, design spacecraft that would allow people to travel through vast distances in space, plan life support systems that would sustain astronauts during their time in the harsh vacuum, communication systems to maintain contact across hundreds of thousands of miles, and a lunar lander that could safely land on the surface of the moon. Each was a quantum leap in man's knowledge and capability. The Apollo program became, in effect, a crucible of innovation, pushing the boundaries of what was possible, and inspiring an entire generation of scientists, engineers, and dreamers. As marvelous as the Apollo space program was technologically, it must not be allowed to overshadow the human element. The astronaut was a daring space explorer, a person who must put his life at risk in the objective of challenging the boundaries for exploration. Their courage and commitment to their duty served as a fine example of the sense of discovery that fueled the whole effort. The Apollo program wasn't just a means to outdo the Soviets. It bore something intrinsic to man, curiosity, that eager to go beyond known frontiers, the thrill of doing what had previously seemed impossible. It captured the imaginations of millions worldwide and united them with a shared sense of awe and potentiality. Although Apollo was an American program, its impact was global. As July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong pronounced,
"It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind,"
as he stepped onto the lunar surface. That inspiration was the success of the Apollo program, through which the world can resonate the potential of humanity if under the same determination. What had previously been thought to be insurmountable turned out to be achievable if met with equal determination, wit, and cooperation. In this epic turn of human history, we reflect on the power of vision, the importance of scientific pursuit, and the boundless potential of human creativity. The legacy of Apollo is inspiring for further research into the cosmos and a quest to know our place in the universe. Now let's talk about Project Mercury, NASA's first human spaceflight program. From 1961 to 1963, Mercury's objective was to establish that a human could survive in the most hostile environment of space. 6 missions launched single astronauts into space with flight times of up to 34 hours. One of the critical milestones was when Alan B. Shepard became the first American in space and completed a 15-minute suborbital flight. This may have been monumental by itself, but was actually just the tip of a very grand idea. After the successful flights of Mercury from 1965 to 1966, the high-flying attention turned towards Project Gemini. It was designed to bridge the development gap between the short, solo manned flights of Mercury and the ambitious lunar missions of Apollo. Gemini fashioned a spacecraft for 2 astronauts, capable of maneuvering various movements in space, a feat much advanced from Mercury. Over the course of 10 missions, Apollo astronauts achieved some firsts in space, such as orbits, rendezvous with other spacecraft, docking with unmanned Agena rockets, spacewalks, and long-duration spaceflights. These successes were crucial in learning how to overcome the difficulties of a manned lunar mission. Gemini taught NASA how to fly, how to live and work in space for periods of about 2 weeks, the length of time required for a manned trip to the moon. Landing man on the moon was considered Apollo's immediate goal, but the purposes of the Apollo space program went much further than just this one event. Apollo was intended to determine the technology to meet other national interests in space, assure the United States preeminence in space, conduct a program of scientific exploration to the moon, and develop man's capability to work in the lunar environment. The incorporation of these goals highlighted the scope of the program, but not just as the exercise of exploring, but one that drove both technological innovations and scientific discoveries. In fact, the road to the moon was not without dark moments. A fire broke out on the command module during the pre-launch test for Apollo 1 on January the 27th, 1967. To their greatest misfortune, all 3 members, Virgil Gus Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Chaffee, perished. Such was the magnitude of the devastation wrought that it caused a total review and redesign of the spacecraft. It put back the mission by months, but from that tragedy, valuable lessons were learned in ensuring the safety and success of the later endeavors. The Apollo program tested the boundaries of engineering and technology in the production of some magnificent machines. There was something at the core of Apollo's success, a marvel of engineering. The Saturn V rocket, 363 feet tall. This 3-stage rocket had sufficient strength to catapult the Apollo, letting it escape Earth's gravity on its way to the moon. The Command and Service Module, the CSM, was literally a mothership where astronauts could retire to sleep, rest or refresh during their cruising to and from the moon, with all vital systems required for navigation, propulsion, and life support. Potentially the most iconic spacecraft of the whole Apollo program, the lunar module, was the craft designed to land and take off from the surface of the moon. Its appearance was truly unique, containing an insect-like look, unlike any ever conceived before or since in spacecraft. The Apollo program involved thousands of engineers, scientists, and support staff working behind the curtain around the clock. Only through dedication and ingenuity did they overcome countless problems that presented themselves in the development of the program. If one considers the very beginning of Apollo, we can only be reminded of what monumental build-ups that took place in the humans' first steps onto another world. The Mercury and Gemini programs set the stepping stone, each providing invaluable knowledge and experience. The tragedy of Apollo 1 was heartbreaking, yet it brought about vital improvements in safety for future missions. The technological marvels engineered for Apollo continue to inspire us today. They are a testament to what we can achieve when we dare to dream big and sweat toil in pursuit of turning those dreams into reality. The success of the Apollo 11 rested in the hands of these three hugely talented astronauts. Neil Armstrong, he was former Navy and participated in the mission as a naval aviator and test pilot. Known for his state of being composed and high intelligence, Armstrong was soon to become the first human being to descend to the lunar surface. Buzz Aldrin, he was the lunar module pilot who held a doctorate in astronautics from MIT and was, simply put, a brilliant person. His expertise in orbital mechanics played an important role during the mission. And finally, Michael Collins, he was to be the pilot in the command module, Columbia, which orbited the moon while his fellow astronauts were walking the moon. So, three men, each contributing with different skills, backgrounds and experiences, were to apply their skills towards accomplishing what humankind never performed yet. The main engines of the Apollo 11 spacecraft's Saturn V rocket were fired at 9:32 a.m. Eastern Time, and the spacecraft lifted off the launch pad from Kennedy Space Center on July 16, 1969. The mission control in Houston maintained contact with the spaceship throughout its ascent into the sky. Finally, Armstrong's voice crackled over the radio. "This is Apollo 11. We're going through our roll and pitch program." For 3 days, Armstrong, Aldrin and Collins hurtled through space, covering nearly 250,000 miles. During this time, they conducted course corrections, checked systems and prepared for the challenges ahead. As they drew closer and closer to the moon, the crew started looking out the window at the Earth and its continents slowly disappearing in the distance. In Aldrin's recollection, "I could see the moon, I could see the Earth getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and the moon getting larger and larger." On July 20th, 1969, at 4:17 p.m. Eastern Time, the lunar module Eagle touched down on the moon. Armstrong's voice crackled over the radio from 240,000 miles away.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
6 hours later, at 10:56 Eastern Time, Armstrong exited the Eagle and began his slow crawl out onto the ladder. At this moment, his foot touched down on the moon's surface and he spoke those famous words. While on the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin collected about 50 pounds of lunar material to bring back with them to Earth. They also took photographs, collected more data than initially planned, and deployed the early Apollo scientific experiments package, which would allow them to remain exposed to the lunar atmosphere and to the solar wind. One of the most iconic moments came when they planted the American flag. Having said that, the gesture included a placard claiming, "We came in peace for all mankind," symbolizing the universal magnitude of their achievement. While Armstrong and Aldrin were walking and hopping around on the moon, Collins was by himself inside the command module Columbia. For 21 hours, Collins traveled solo, an existence almost completely devoid of human contact with his two colleagues whenever the moon orbited between his own spacecraft and Earth. Collins later wrote about the experience saying, "I am alone now, truly alone, and absolutely isolated from any known life. I am it, If account were taken, the score would be 3 billion plus 2 on the side of the moon, and 1 plus God knows what on this side. From the lunar surface, Armstrong and Aldrin saw a sight few humans have ever seen: the Earth as a remote, delicate blue orb suspended in the darkness of space. There was tremendous impact from their observation, not only on astronauts, but on the global human recognition about our place in the cosmos. A brilliant jewel in the black velvet sky, as Aldrin described it, and Collins put it, the thing that really surprised me was that it projected an air of fragility, and why I don't know. I don't know to this day. I had a feeling it's tiny, it's shiny, it's beautiful, it's home, and it's fragile. Indeed, the view of our planet as a small interlocked world in space caused a jump in the environmentalist movement and change in the view of our place in the universe. Apollo 11 is still one of the most remarkable achievements humans have ever done, and it just shows what we can do when we put our minds together. The moon landing of Apollo 11 has been one of the most defining and most transforming moments in history. That first step seemed to put an astronaut, Neil Armstrong, for a time beyond the divisions of Earth. Some 600 million people, or perhaps nearly 1/5 of the population of the globe at the time, watched the moonwalk live on television. It was an experience sharing a moment together and collective achievement. Michael Collins, the command module pilot, later reflected, was the thing that really surprised me was that everywhere we went on Earth, people, instead of saying, well, you Americans did it, they said, we did it, we humankind, we the human race, we the people did it. The technological breakthroughs spurred by Apollo have had repercussions felt in every aspect of our lives today. Now in the 21st century, NASA-related innovations include the 1,800 spin-off products such as cordless power tools, fireproof materials, heart monitors, solar panels, and digital imaging technology. Perhaps one of the most important technological legacies of the Apollo was its role in driving the development of integrated circuits. By 1963, the Apollo program was using 60% of the United States' production of integrated circuits, pushing forward the computer revolution that would transform our world. The course of cultural consciousness was affected by the moon landing in such profound ways as well. It was an inspiration for all of these different art forms, music, literature, and movies. From David Bowie in his Space Oddity to Stanley Kubrick's landmark 2001: A Space Odyssey, what has always been thought of as a lofty pioneering vision and was now just a parcel of popular culture. And also, let's not forget, Apollo 8 was the flight in which the astronaut William Anders brought home the iconic Earthrise photograph. This image is a small, fragile blue marble suspended within the vastness of space. It's changed forever our perception of Earth and our place in the cosmos. Apollo 12 showed the possibility of the pinpoint landing. Apollo 13 was a near catastrophe that showed the people resourcefulness and troubleshooting abilities of the people in space. Apollos 15, 16, and 17, they demonstrated the use of lunar roving vehicle which allowed astronauts to travel on the moon's surface. These missions greatly increased our scientific knowledge of the moon and returned with an addition of 842 pounds of lunar rocks and soil samples. These samples still give new information today as scientists around the world continue doing research with Apollo-era lunar materials. The legacy of the Apollo program is much more than its immediate scientific and technological achievements. It is still inspiring and shaping our approach to space exploration. Apollo created the spirit of global oneness, which has brought increasing international cooperation to the field of space exploration, as evidenced in projects such as the International Space Station. The success of Apollo has also helped really open up the flowering commercial space industry we see today. And then, of course, the program continues to inspire students to pursue careers in the fields of science, technology, engineering and mathematics. And of course we have NASA's Artemis program, which will supposedly land the first woman and the next man on the surface of the moon, and preparation for the first human mission to Mars. It can be said that this was all influenced and inspired from the heritage of the Apollo missions as we look to the future of space exploration. Now let's talk about the extraordinary, demanding training program that the Apollo astronauts took, both physically and mentally. The ways in which they had to prepare were very diverse and intense enough ahead of time to ensure that everything was covered in case it would happen in space. This was the hard part. The physical training was grueling. Astronauts were subjected to the punishing forces of high G by use of centrifuges and whirling around, testing at full throttle the ability of their bodies to absorb the intense pressures of launch and re-entry. They also sunk endless hours of swimming in neutral buoyancy tanks, simulating weightlessness while rehearsing intricate tasks in bulky spacesuits. But it wasn't all physical training. They had to take in everything from geology to photography, navigation, and spacecraft systems. Hundreds of hours were spent in simulators, while the astronauts practiced each part of their missions, including emergencies. According to Neil Armstrong, and you can truly believe this now, looking back at the training, he said, "I believe that every human has a finite number of heartbeats, and I don't intend to waste any of mine." It captures the attitude that was required from these early astronauts. Space travel during the 1960s was fraught with various hazards, some very poorly understood at the time. Radiation exposure was one of them. At the time, the recently found Van Allen radiation belts posed a special problem for lunar missions. And then there was the isolation. Michael Collins, who orbited the moon alone while his crewmates walked its surface, just goes to show remarkable tests of human psychology and durability. This adds another level of risk. The unknowns in space, which no amount of careful planning or preparation could erase the fact of finding unanticipated problems. To quote Jim Lovell, the Apollo 13 commander, "There are people who make things happen, there are people who watch things happen, and there are people who wonder what happened. To be successful, you need to be a person who makes things happen." The cost of the Apollo program did not stop with the astronauts, but extended into their families. Long periods away from home, constant threats of danger, and the relentless public spotlight put a huge strain on family relations. Buzz Aldrin's wife, Joan, spoke of the difficulties. "I was at a cocktail party," she said. Someone asked her, "Well, Joan, what do you think about your husband going to the moon?" And she said, "Well, I just wish he had waited until the last few go." In reflection, Jim Lovell once looked at the Earth from space and said, "Far out there on the moon, international politics looks so petty. You want to grab a politician by the scruff of his neck, just grab him 250,000 miles out and just say, 'Look at that.'" Buzz Aldrin said that the surface was magnificent desolation, showing both the beauty and great chasm of nothingness on the moon. Usually quite reserved, Neil Armstrong waxed lyrical about the sight from the surface of the moon. "It suddenly struck me that that tiny pea, pretty and blue, was the Earth. I put up my thumb and I shut one eye, and my thumb blotted out the planet Earth. I didn't feel like a giant. I felt very, very small." Personal anecdotes like these, they bring us to understand deeply what the transformative effects of space travel are for these travelers. The Apollo program produced valuable scientific knowledge that greatly impacted our understanding of the moon, and with it, the solar system. Let's review that with a few of the most important findings. The research in moon rocks turns out to be almost exactly identical to the composition of the Earth, thus giving the giant impact theory a favor. The theory postulates that a Mars-sized object hit early Earth, spewing material into orbit that eventually coalesced into a satellite, the Moon. All the Apollo missions resulted in the fact that the Moon was not really a primordial object, but an evolved terrestrial planet that went through a complex geological history of its own. we found that it does have a mantle, a crust, and potentially a little iron core. The surface of the Moon, which has never been weathered nor deformed by plate tectonics, holds a record of early solar system. The youngest moon rocks were roughly almost as ancient as the old Earth rocks, allowing a new view into our planet's distant past. The rich record of meteorite impacts on the Moon also calibrate to the dating of geological events on other planets and have since revolutionized our knowledge of solar system chronology. An in-depth analysis of lunar samples have also showed no trace of life, either fossil or present. This discovery pointed out the peculiar conditions that prevailed on Earth to foster life. These discoveries have changed not only our view of the Moon, but definitely bring new environment to our understanding of how rocky planets in the solar system were formed and evolved. Perhaps one of the most momentous and unexpected results of the Apollo program was the change in outlook it gave to humanity. The vision of Earth hanging in space as a small, vulnerable blue marble, as Edgar Mitchell, one of the Apollo 14 astronauts, so well put it. You develop an instant global consciousness, a people orientation, an intense dissatisfaction with the state of the world, and a compulsion to do something about it. The new perspective catalyzed the environmental movement. We have to take care of our pale blue dot, as Carl Sagan would later describe it, with artificial national borders and all the life being interconnected. This success of Apollo in this sense was global. What had originally been achieved from a motivation of competition within the Cold War showed to the world the power of peaceful applications of scientific exploration, fueling interest in international collaboration. In the years that followed Apollo, we would see the 1975 Apollo-Soyuz test project as the first joint US-Soviet spaceflight. We'd also see the International Space Station, probably the most far-reaching international scientific and engineering project ever undertaken, involving 5 space agencies over 15 countries. We've also seen global lunar exploration. Nations such as China, India, and Israel have all sent their own missions to the Moon, building on foundations laid by Apollo. And of course, Mars exploration. The lessons learned from Apollo have directly gone into inform us how we explore Mars. Basically, the Apollo program has showed the world what is possible when a nation is willing to commit both its resources and its brightest minds to one single ambitious goal. And it's encouraged other nations not so much to seek space exploration for national prestige, but as a means of scientific and technological development for humanity's sake. As we look forward to future forays in space, the legacy of Apollo remains. It reminds us of this ideal to set high goals, goals that are hard to reach, of how the world's greatest achievements are possible through cooperation and to change. The Apollo program was no more than a race to the Moon. It was a gift to humanity. This program contributed to the increase of our scientific knowledge by changing our philosophical standpoint and nurturing global cooperation in the search for knowledge and exploration. As we meet the challenges of this new century, let's keep carrying on that spirit of the Apollo, to dream big, to push beyond the boundaries of what seems possible, and to remember that we are all citizens of the Earth, we are all one. Right now the focus truly is on the ambitious Artemis program. The next steps are to be taking humans back to that lunar surface and establishing a presence that is sustainable. Next up are Artemis, who is a twin sister to Apollo in Greek mythology. That is the new era of lunar exploration. In essence, the Artemis program will chart a sustainable long-term plan for human exploration so NASA can learn more about how to live and work on another world other than our own. By testing new technologies on the Moon, NASA hopes to prove that the Moon is sustainable for an innovative journey to Mars, enabling a persistent, sustainable approach for decades still to come. The Artemis program milestones are the Artemis II, which is proposed for September 2025, This is the first crewed mission to orbit the moon since Apollo, and Artemis 3, which is proposed for September 2026. This mission is to return the next man and land the first woman on the lunar surface. And we have Artemis 4, 2028, which is the first mission to the Lunar Gateway space station. Robotic exploration on Mars and other celestial bodies in our solar system never ceases beyond Artemis. It only paves our way for human exploration. Probably the most exciting recent developments in the sector have been the private companies entering the space sector. Companies such as SpaceX and Blue Origin, they're not simply support businesses for NASA's missions, they're drivers of innovation and reducing the cost of space access. SpaceX set the way for the rocket technology, the reusable Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. The company is now working on its Starship to pioneer deep space exploration. Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin is working on its New Glenn rocket, and that's conducting suborbital tourism flights. Other firms as well, Virgin Galactic, they continue to make space more democratic, with this competition mostly based on innovation, like a creative destruction force pushing its costs lower. Looking further wide open, the possibilities get really exciting, really speculative. Once deemed the realm of science fiction, serious discussion is undergoing for planning colonization of the moon and Mars. A permanent lunar base could provide a springboard for exploration deeper into space, offering valuable experience in living off-world and utilizing local resources. Many space visionaries look on Mars, its similarity to Earth, and its potential to be terraformed as their ultimate goal. Beyond Mars, we could envision human bases on the satellites of Jupiter and Saturn, even cities on the clouds of Venus. These concepts might seem ridiculous, but remember that barely more than a century ago, the concept of walking on the moon was thought to be just as ridiculous. Areas that might be shaping the future course of space exploration are AI, artificial intelligence, and robotics. We've got AI-driven robots that can be used to scout potential landing sites. They can construct habitats and undertake dangerous activities in preparation for humans. There's advanced propulsion, technologies that include ion propulsion, nuclear thermal propulsion, and then for that matter even some boundless ideas such as warp drives might significantly decrease travel times for human transportation across the solar system. Got life support systems, closed-loop environmental control and life support systems that are needed for independent long-duration missions and off-world colonies. 3D printing and in-situ resource utilization. These technologies may establish the ability to manufacture tools and structures using local materials, a move that would diminish the transport of everything from Earth. Next generation suits, they'll offer much more enhanced mobility, protection, and even augmented reality interfaces that assist and aid the astronauts at work. So you can see we're on this new frontier of space exploration. The thing that should remain in our minds, but every advancement made in space technology serves in some way to better life here on Earth, from satellite communications to medical breakthroughs. Space exploration is a bright future, facing lots of challenges, with plenty of discoveries and wonders. Reaching the stars represents a goal that we should stretch for in human progress, following in the footsteps of the Apollo program as we continue to stretch the limits of human knowledge and capability. The Apollo program spoke not only of the ingenuity of humankind, but also human creativity, bravery, and resolve. It's the dawn of a new age of exploration, extending human reach off the bounds of our home planet for the first time. Apollo's meaning, it just cannot be overstated. It pushed on every limit of technology, science, and ability of humankind in ways from which we can continue to benefit, even from basic achievements of computing, material science, to breakthroughs in life support systems and propulsion technology. These innovations from Apollo penetrate wherever we go. Furthermore, Apollo infused new vigor and human achievement dominated by a single purpose. Arrival proved that with ample vision, resources, and gumption, we can overcome the most formidable barriers. Its lessons serve to inspire a new generation of scientists, engineers, and explorers to take on these great challenges of our time, from climate change to space exploration. This is as ancient as humankind itself, nudging us to sail across the entire oceans, climb the highest mountain peaks, and now even reach for the stars. Those left by the Apollo astronauts on the lunar surface, those footprints, they stand for more than American triumph. They're human testimony to the spirit of exploration and Neil Armstrong's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. That's the spirit of exploration that lives on in the ambitious plans to that return to the moon, the establishment of a permanent presence, and eventually aspirations for Mars and beyond. The key to these ambitions is not only the challenge of Apollo, but the very basic drive to break ground and capabilities and to establish the outmost bound in the realm of human experience. As we cast our view back on Apollo from the perspective of the 21st century, this mission significantly grows. It was from the realization of what we could do when big dreams are followed through the dedication of hard work. The Apollo program inspires the next generation of explorers. It's a blueprint for ambition, large-scale scientific endeavors. It reminds us of the invest in STEM education and instill curiosity and creativity in the young. But most important of all, it continues to set our collective imagination on fire, with thoughts that is beyond urging to look up and wonder as we stare into the night sky. The legacy of Apollo has not just been one of the past, but definitely one of the future. As we begin to face the 21st century challenges, this climate change, resource scarcity, the Apollo lessons abound. No challenge can be too great when we put it to full measure of our creativity, determination, and collaborative spirit. So don't forget those words of President John F. Kennedy, who set the Apollo program in motion. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they're easy, but because they are hard. That ethos, that we tackle challenges, not despite the difficulty, but because the challenge before us lives on to inspire us today. As we get near the end of this Apollo journey, and if you're still awake, just look outside, look at the moon, think about how extraordinary it was for humanity to actually be able to touch its surface. As you do, remember that the exploration spirit that drove Apollo is still alive in each of us, lying in wait to be woken up in service to the challenges and opportunities of our age. So thank you very much for joining me in this exploration of the Apollo program, and keep looking up, keep asking questions, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Because in the end, we are all explorers, and we're all on the greatest frontiers of those that lie ahead. See you next time.